In our first all too brief look at this wonderful Psalm of David, 139, we looked at the theme of God's omniscience in the first of the four stanzas. Now we turn to the next two stanzas, 7 to 12 and 13 to 18, where David worshipfully considers God's omnipresence and omnipotence. In other words, the fact that God is not only all-knowing, as we've seen, but also all-present and all-powerful. I'd originally planned, as I said last time, to do 4 brief studies in this psalm, but I've changed that to 3 because I want to take this second and third sections together for reasons which I'll explain in a few moments. First, in verses 7 to 12, as we think about God's omnipresence, David poses 2 rhetorical questions, in both cases anticipating a negative answer. Where shall I go from your spirit, i.e. the Holy Spirit, or where shall I flee from your presence? It's not that David is thinking about doing so, let alone wants to flee from the presence of God, but he's posing the question in order to make us reflect on the answer, which is, in both cases, nowhere. David is asserting that there's not a single location in this entire vast, immeasurable universe created by God where he is not present. Whether you go to the heavenly places, says David, or down into the very depths of hell itself, even there you will find God. By the way, if it bothers you that God is present in hell, take a look at Revelation 14:10. Now, we need to stress that David is not teaching some form of pantheism here. Pantheism teaches that God and the universe are actually one and the same, and that the universe is merely a manifestation of God. David is not talking here about God being everywhere because he is the everywhere present universe, nor is he saying that God is in some way spread thinly throughout his creation. That's the very opposite of omnipresence. No, God created the universe. He existed before it did. And God, the person of God, not just in his influence and in his power, is everywhere in his whole being. It's not that you find some of God in one place and another bit of God somewhere else. God in all his fullness and in all his completeness is everywhere. Neither is it just the power of God that is all present. It's the very person of God. So David says, wherever I go or could go, you are there. Friends, like the truth of the omniscience of God, his omnipresence is both a comfort and a concern. On the one hand, this precious truth assures us that we can never be out of the sight or of the presence of God, and therefore out of his reach. It also means, of course, that we can truly worship God wherever we are, and that we are always in his line of vision. But this reality is also a solemn warning against sin and disobedience, because it reminds us that all our actions are seen by and are committed in the presence of this God. But then in verses 13 to 18, David's thoughts about God's being everywhere lead him to consider God's omnipotence. And the link, which really has struck me in recent days, is seen at the beginning of verse 13 with the word for or because. And that's why these 2 sections are joined together in this sense, and I want to keep them together. In fact, to be strictly accurate, I think that word for links back not just to the thoughts about God's omnipresence, but also to his omniscience in verses 1 to 6. You see, what David is getting at is this: God knows everything because he is everywhere. And God knows everything and is everywhere because he is the creator of all things, not least me, says the psalmist. Or to put it another way, the existence of David, or for that matter, you and me, proves the omniscience and omnipresence of God. My very existence is a visual aid of the omnipotence of God. No wonder God knows me so intimately with that Yada knowledge, because he is the one who shaped and fashioned me in the secret place of my mother's womb. Friends, aren't these utterly beautiful words in these verses, expressing an unspeakably beautiful truth? Who but an all-powerful, omnipotent God could create a unique human in this way, knitted together, as David says, to a unique design? Is there a more amazing, supernatural, omnipotent act than the one in which, unseen by the world, God knits together in a mother's womb all the necessary ingredients for a unique and distinctive human being made in his image? There, in the security of the purpose-made womb, it develops in a perfect environment, air-conditioned, centrally heated, the temperature not varying by more than about 1 degree in the whole 9 months. Shock protected, every need met. And after those 9 months, it emerges into the world with all the rational and spiritual faculties that mark it out from the rest of creation. My innermost parts were hidden to the world, but not to God. God saw my unformed body before I was made, and he knew the end of my life from before its beginning. Every detail of my very existence is intimately known by God because it originates with him. And that's what makes abortion, for example, such an abhorrent, heinous crime. Now, all of that is the reality. What's the appropriate, inevitable response? Well, says David in verses 17 to 18, because God knows everything and is everywhere, there isn't a single split-second moment of time, either day or night, when God is not thinking about me or when he is not present with me. Whether I'm awake or asleep, I'm never out of either the sight or the mind of God. He says there are more thoughts about me in the mind and heart of God than there are grains of sand on the seashore. That is just staggering. Friends, if that reality doesn't encourage you, if it doesn't comfort you, if it doesn't humble you, if it doesn't gladden your spirit and make your heart want to burst with praise and thanksgiving, then I genuinely don't know what will. The problem is that not everyone reacts like that. And that's at least part of what we'll consider next time when we look at verses 19 to 24. Do join me then.